So I always struggled to explain to people, and even myself, what KGI meant, because it's so many different things. I found that the best way to describe it was through a parable. And this parable is a race up Biotech Mountain. So there's a race to get to the top of Biotech Mountain. There's 3 contestants. The first is a PhD. So the PhD had spent the last 6 years studying a particular path up Biotech Mountain very well. So this PhD knew this path better than anyone else, like the back of her hand, and could get up that path very quickly. There's also an MBA who didn't necessarily know the paths up Biotech Mountain that well, but was provided with all the best equipment to get to the top. So you can imagine this MBA had a jetpack that enabled that MBA to get to the top of the mountain without having to really learn the paths that well. KGI student was somewhere in between, right? A hybrid. So the KGI student spent a lot of time understanding all the different paths up that mountain and how each path links to the other. And the KGI student also had a fair amount of good tools to use to get to the top of that mountain. So they all started the race. Right, the MBA turned on the jetpack and went on his way. PhD put on a blindfold because she knew the path like the back of her hand, so she didn't really even need to look, just started up the path and took an early lead. KGI student took her time a little bit. Went up each path, learned how they each interact with each other, got a feel for how they went, and started up the mountain. So then a storm hits. Right, and this is a storm on Biotech Mountain, which you could think of any other way. Maybe it's the financial crisis, maybe it's the Affordable Care Act, maybe it's these pricing arguments that we're having right now. There seems to be a storm every year. And storm alters the paths up the mountain. So the PhD student now has to take off her blindfold and sees that the path is not what she'd spent the last 6 years studying. It's changed a little bit, and this slows her down. The MBA student finds that they can't just use this jetpack up the mountain when there's a storm going on. They have to really understand the landscape. And so without a great knowledge of the past, the MBA student is also slowed. KGI student, though, who had spent a lot of her time understanding each path and how they interact with each other, how each one leads to the other, found that after the paths had been altered by the storm, she still knew how they had formed within each other so that she could get to the top of the mountain. So this is, to me, how KGI prepares us well to succeed. Because we understand the biotech landscape as a whole, we're able to react when things change. And we're able to take advantage and find opportunities when they exist to get to the top and have impact on the industry.